G'day guys, welcome to today's tutorial. Today we are talking about the Swiss Bar Deadstart Row. Really good exercise just to tighten up those potential momentum factors that we're starting to creep in. So maybe if we're doing a Pendlay row where we start off the ground, maybe we're driving a little bit through our legs. If we're doing a barbell row, maybe we're sort of swinging and arching a bit. The beauty about the dead start row is essentially is that we start the row at our barbell height, so our normal bent over barbell row height at the bottom portion, and then we're rowing from this position, obviously from there, versus say that extra little depth where we start off the ground when it comes to the Pendlay row. So good little tightening tool, really good progressive overloader, and so on and so forth. Right, so why would we choose the Swiss bar over the normal barbell to do this type of row? Well, first and foremost, what the Swiss bar offers is that it changes our hand grip. So it starts to put or allow ourselves to do the same rowing patterns that we would when it comes to a normal barbell. However, it offers our hands to be in a 45 degree position. So on this bar, we have a 45 degree handle and also a normal neutral 90 degree range. So now it sort of takes on the loading pattern of, say, a seated row where we're able to use a V-bar. However, we're doing it in a barbell sense. So really good alternative option. Just as good as a barbell. One I wouldn't argue is better than the other. The only downside about this is obviously because of the width of the bar, it makes it a little trickier to get up and into the hips, so we might have to be over the top of the barbell a little bit more. But outside of that, this Swiss bar is a fantastic, fun alternative option. Okay, so how would we go about performing this particular lift? We would set up exactly the same way as we would with our normal dead start row. Again, because it is a free weight option, we want to make sure that we are controlling our entire body, so we need to set a really good foundation first before we then move into our rowing pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to think about our feet, think about the fact that this is our foundation. A lot of people, when they do any rowing pattern, they tend to find that the first thing that goes is their lower back. Now, what that tells me is two things. One, they're arguably looking up and into the mirror, and we'll talk about what to do with your head position shortly, but also it tells me that their foundation sucks. So, when we are doing any row, we want to screw our feet in. A great cue for that is to think you're a corkscrew and you're screwing into the ground. Another great cue is that we have a piece of paper underneath your feet and you're going to rip that piece of paper apart. So we're pulling that paper apart, or you're going to pull the world apart, or however it is that you want to remember it. Another way is that I use numbers. So we create 3 points of contact. Those 3 points are up onto your tippy toes, up onto the tippy toes 1 and 2. Okay, if I rock back onto my heels, that's 0.3. Now, all I want them to do is to make your weight go to the outside of your foot, and so 0.2 is your pinky toe, 0.3 is your heel, and we're going to push all our weight to the outside, and we're going to connect 0.2 and 0.3 together, and then 0.1 must stay on, which is in line with your big toe. Okay, so now that we have our screwing pattern in, what you'll notice is that your knees will want to push out and your glutes will come on, and essentially it's all about those glutes being on, which is what will save your lower back. So we're going to screw our feet in, knees are going to go out, glutes are going to come on. In this position, my lower back isn't taking any of the load. It's all through my hamstrings, all through my glutes, and I have a nice, solid sounding foundation to row from. Okay, nice and stable foundation to row from. Now, let's talk about your head. What happens when people row, especially when there's mirrors ahead of them, is that they screw their feet in, their knees go out, their glutes go on, but they start to look up, okay? And what happens here is it creates a pivot point from here. People start to arch from this position, especially when they try and get into the retraction. We'll talk about that in a minute, okay? You see them all the time. they start arching from this position, and essentially they're doing sort of a hyper back extension. There you see their lower back is pulling, and all this load of the barbell is starting to go away from, say, our lats and our rear delts and our traps, and moving into this lower rectal spinae. So what I want you to do is keep your chin and your head focused down. Now you can see that where my head is down, how much of a neutral spine I have all the way down into my backside, versus if I'm up, I arch here. Okay, so a little trick to make sure that you don't fall into that particular pattern. Now, when it comes to our retraction, what we need to know is that all rows want to pull you into this position here. Okay, now it is on us to make sure that we pull our shoulder blades back and down. Okay, and this creates a nice, strong, stable back. You will feel your lats come on, and they are to remain on the entire pattern and the entire row. Now, another issue that I find with people is that they're like, well, Rick, what if I need to stretch, I need to come all the way forward, all the way back, like I'm rowing a boat. Okay, now that in itself is a skill, and it's something that needs to be built over time. What you need, the skill set that you're looking to achieve, is that you want to be able to lower the weight and control the weight all the way out whilst keeping tension through these lats. Now, regularly do I see people end up in this position, and you can see the systemic effect that when I am in this position, you can see how it just rolls on and into your lower back. Okay, you go lax, and it's now the weight pulling you out, and you've got to regain and recover from that position. Now, what I would rather you do is pull your shoulder blades back and down, finish the row here, because what we know about the row is that the row is essentially all about shoulder blades coming together and this retraction process there. Okay, now people are like, oh, what about lats and all this type of stuff? Well, if you really want to target your lats, if you want to get really deep dive and technical and into them, well, a better option is probably a chin up or probably a lat pull down. Right? So the row is about that retraction, it's about pulling through. So if we don't stretch out and get those lats involved, then, well, look, sure, over the journey you might sort of rip yourself off some lat gains, but are you doing a row for lats, or are you doing the row to hit the middle of your back and build out those traps and build out that thickness through the upper back? So I would argue that you're probably not ripping yourself off a great deal. Now, again, if you do want to practice this, a great way to feel it is if you can grab a hold of a pole. I want to pull your shoulder blades back and down, and I want you to sort of lean out, and then when you lean out, you're going to keep that tension through the lats. You're going to feel a stretch, and you're going to pull up, okay? And the idea here is that it's mimicking the load pulling you out, and you not allowing yourself to let go. Another great example of this is with your bicep. Get a friend or something to pull, or yourself to push that bicep down while you keep it on as hard as you can. You'll notice that the muscle will always be on and taking that load. The worst thing you can do is let it go lax, because what happens is that it's the ligaments and tendons taking all that load. It's not that muscle. Muscle's not going to grow. Okay, it's going to load up these elbow joints and cause you an issue. Okay, same sort of idea when it comes to your lats, is that if you just let it go, you're going to open your spine up for some injuries and so on. Okay, back to the elbows for just a second. One of the common mistakes a lot of people do is they row to their chest. Now, the reason why this is a common mistake is because you can see that when I come up to my chest, that my elbows have now gone their full range. Okay, so we're all locked up here, we're all bound up, and I can't get that barbell past my chest. So you can see that I actually don't get into that retraction. Okay, what we need to do is we need to open up this elbow joint, and we need to be pulling to our hips. Not only does the chest sort of get out of the way then, and we have a little bit more room to pull back in, but you can see how much it opens up my shoulder joints, and it allows me to get that full retraction back, okay, without actually going past my hips. If I was to try and get that full retraction out, I'd have to flare my elbows right out and pull back. Now, there's nothing wrong with coming with flared elbows, but obviously that would be a pronated position. With a Swiss bar, we can't quite do that. Okay, so let's go through exactly what it is that we want to do with the Swiss bar. So we're going to come up to the bar. Remember, it's a dead start, so we're going to be stopping and starting on the arms. I'm going to load up my lower back from this position. I'm going to get in, and remember, with the dead start, where we want the bar to start is just below our kneecaps, because we're going to mimic our 1 point. So we want to make sure that our first point is always at just below our kneecaps, second point always up into our hips. Okay, so it's going to mimic that finish point. All right, so shoulder blades are going to go back and down. And then from here, I grabbed a hold of the 45, but you can definitely grab a hold of the 90s. It's completely up to you. Shoulder blades are going to go back and down. Make sure that we don't open ourselves up too heavily. So we want to box up, think about this top rib going into this hip, because if we arch, right, and so our head comes up, not only do we jam up this lower back, but we open ourselves up here and our midsection isn't on. So we're going to bunch that up. We're going to keep nice and tight, and then that should keep this lower back nice and straight as well. So again, we're going to screw our feet in, shoulder blade's going to go back down. Okay, we're going to bunch up, we're going to take a big deep breath in, hold that breath in, and then we're going to roll to our hips. And then pause at the bottom. 2, 3. Now, one little added tension trick that you can use is, because of the nature of the hand grip, that they're in a neutral position, you can actually create external force coming out this way, which is going to liven up your back. So what I am mimicking, or what I'm thinking about doing, is I'm thinking about ripping the barbell apart, because let's pretend that it's connected in the middle. I'm pulling it apart, just like I'm pulling apart the ground with my feet. Okay, I'm going to pull our shoulder blades back and down. I'm going to pull this bar apart, create that tension. Okay, from here, up, bang, 1, up, bang, 2, and you're going to feel your middle of your back come absolutely alive. If that doesn't work well for you, then don't worry about pulling the bar apart. Just go through your natural range motion, natural rowing patterns. Team, that there is how you want to go about doing a Swiss Bar Deadstart Row. I hope you picked up a few tricks and tips with this particular tutorial.